Okay, so had a lot of requests on doing some like outdoor boudoir stuff, and actually, um, my wife and I, who my wife is right here in this picture, went out with a fellow photographer, and just I went out and showed him what I do for stuff like this. It helps. It really, really helps that my wife is down to model and do whatever. Um, if you don't have a partner like that, or don't have a friend um, or just a model on hand, you might have to hire somebody. But luckily, I have my wife, and she's always down. So open this up in Photoshop. Actually, technically opening it up in Camera Raw, but it's because I do most of my work in Photoshop. Now, if you use Lightroom, this interface is pretty much exactly the same as the develop module in Lightroom. I've found, and this is just me, I've found that I don't need Lightroom for anything because I've been a Photoshop user before Lightroom ever existed, and Camera Raw is kind of built in. It's the same thing, so on, etc. All right, so I don't have any idea how I'm going to edit this. This was just a nice picture that I got at the end of the evening with my wife and my buddy Jason, who has been doing photography for as long as I have, but doesn't feel as comfortable as I do with doing boudoir stuff and doing especially outdoor stuff. And he's a big guy, and he just doesn't want the girls to think he's creepy and so on, etc. So I get it. So I had him come and just follow my workflow, and he got some really great pictures. This is one of my pictures from the day, and we're just going to edit it. And I also told him I was going to help edit his pictures, and we haven't done that yet. So I guess he'll get to watch this just like you guys. So, all right. First, I'm going to do my crop. I tend to, with a lot of my work nowadays, because of Instagram and stuff like that, I'll set everything to an 8x10. And if we're using the rule of thirds here, I don't want to lose her feet. Her right breast, which is on camera left here, falls in that rule of thirds. Her elbow is kind of on this rule of thirds. The rule of thirds going across here is across her chest. This is pretty close to her knee. We could probably just bump this up just a little bit. I don't like to get like heads and stuff too close to the top of the frame, but I think this will be all right. If we need to, once we get it into Photoshop, we can expand this out a little bit. And generative fill will give us a little bit of breathing room, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So I'm going to shrink my face here. Just, really need to see me. So, all right. So I'm editing on my couch like normal. And there's a reason for this. I don't have an office set up right now. And long story short, my wife and I and my son are moving across the country and going to open up a photo studio on the East Coast. In that process, I've disassembled my actual working office. So my office is my living room. So bear with me. All right. So here's my wife sitting here. Now there's some things I'm just going to be very blunt about. Like this picture is not a perfect pose. Her belly's not really sucked in there. She was kind of relaxed, getting ready to shoot for Jason. And she would not probably want this as a finished product. I'm going to fix all that in Photoshop. Kind of controversial. A lot of people, don't like things manipulated. The fact of the matter is in ads and everything, for years and years and years, that was okay to manipulate all that stuff. Now everything's about being natural. I don't really care. It's about making my clients happy. And this situation, I know what my wife likes and what she doesn't like. Like I've done in previous videos, it is what it is. We're gonna do what the client likes. All right. So as you can see, the light is really warm. There was a street light over here somewhere and shining down, and that's why we've got these shadows going across her body here. I did not use any flash or anything. This is all natural light, but I don't like it. So I'm just going to go into the color temperature. I'm going to play with this a little bit. I'm going to take it down to, I don't know, like maybe 5,000 Kelvin, somewhere in there. Now, speaking of Kelvin, I just saw this thing on online about the person's like, what's your favorite color temperature to use? I use Kelvin, and they meant they use the Kelvin setting on their camera to where you could adjust custom Kelvin. They don't understand that Kelvin is not a setting. Everything is a Kelvin followed by a number. That's just a rating of the light. But anyway, if you're going to talk about that stuff, educate yourself a little bit, By the way, I'm going to go and make sure that everything is straight. It is. Okay. So this line right here, I wanted to make sure that this was straight. I'm a real stickler for like horizon lines to look right and everything else. If they're not, and if you don't have enough breathing room, like this is just cutting it close, I wouldn't have done the crop. I would have waited until I was actually in Photoshop and then did some adjustments, because I'm going to have to clean up like some little edges here and whatnot. All right, so yeah, I think about 5,000, 5,100 Kelvin's good. I think I'd add just maybe 10% tint going towards red, just so she don't get a greenish sick look in her skin, just to show you what that would look like. Like that green cast is no good. Red cast isn't as bad, but it is very stylized. I just want to do that a little bit, so maybe I'm gonna go 15%. I know I said 10, but we'll go plus 15. We got blood underneath our skin that gives us that pinkish hue. If it starts looking green, there's probably something wrong with you. You're probably feeling sick. All right, so exposure. My exposure is pretty good. If you hold the Option key down, it'll go black, and you could push it up until you start seeing a little drop of color there. And I think it's overexposed. The computer thinks it's not, so I'm going to just go there. We're pretty close. I think I'm going to bump it up maybe a quarter of a stop. Just give us a little bit of room. I'm going to leave the contrast alone. I think that's fine. I am going to take the highlights down just a bit, maybe minus 20, and then we're going to bring the shadows up, maybe plus 20 or so. Somewhere in there. We might adjust that to taste here in a minute. I'll move this white slider. I want to take the whites down just a smidge, maybe minus 8, and then we're actually going to take the blacks up, which means there's not going to be as much black. It's not going to be as dark. Now, this is pretty personal flavor, I guess, is the best way to put it. The trend right now is dark and moody, which most people just underexpose their shit. That's okay, but I like my women especially to look very clear and easy to see, and I can add the mystery with color grading. So now under here, I'm going to skip texture and clarity really quick. I'm going to go down to dehaze. I'm just going to go to negative dehaze just to show you what that looks like. See how it brightens the whole image, but it almost gives a glowy effect. That's really cool for sunset type of stuff like that, if you got that. It doesn't really work on portraits as well, but if you go the other way, it'll start getting dark and moody without underexposing it. So I'm going to go to about 20% dehaze, and that's really, you can see these little blue little things. That means we're starting to clip those blacks. So I'm going to go back up to the black. I'm going to go up just a little bit with that. I'm going to go down. Now I'm going to go up to my contrast slider, and I'm going to take the contrast down to about 15. Still got just a touch. I'll just zoom in a little bit. A touch of blue. That's still no good. So I'm going to take the dehaze down just a little bit. I think we went a little too hot. So play around with that. Maybe 10%. And then we're going to go shadows and bring those up a little bit more. So, yeah, all right. Getting close. So once I get to there, now we'll mess with vibrance. If you take it way up, it's it seems like it's more saturated, and it's actually not. I mean, the vibrance is just taking those bright colors and making them more pronounced. If you take it down, so you can take it all the way down, there's still a touch of color left. I am not going to mess with that. I just want to show you what that's at. And the saturation, same thing. Like if you pump, see how if I pump the saturation up, those colors just get off the wall. Compared to pumping up the vibrance, they still look fairly natural, just a little overdone. Let me go back down to 0. Real close to it. The saturation, I'm just going to bring it up just a little bit. And I'm going to tell you right now, all this is going to be black and white when I'm done, so it won't really matter. Or more than likely, it's going to be black and white. I'm not going to mess with the curves right now, detail, color mixer. None of that stuff matters in this image. You know, people want to know how I edit these type of images, so this is where I'd go. And so that's where I'm going to stop right now. We're going to go back into here when we're done, and we're going to adjust the colors. I'm going to do this strictly in Camera Raw and Photoshop. You could do it strictly in Lightroom if you wanted to, except for the retouching stuff would be not as possible. So Photoshop is kind of the key here. I'm going to move my face over here. All right, so we've got my wife here, and here's where I'm going to do a couple things. So first and foremost, I'm going to go into Liquify. And this is just going to take out like some of the distortions that a camera does. I was using, I don't remember what lens I was using here. I think my 28 to 70, and things are going to be just slightly distorted. Go back a little bit. So I'm going to click on face. She's got her head turned a little bit, so it's kind of giving her like jowl looking area. That's not what she looks like, so I'm just going to take her face and squeeze it back down. And also my wife got her nose worked on, and the doctors messed things up, so she developed this little nodule here. I'm going to get rid of that because it didn't used to be there, and she's awaiting to get that fixed. So I'm just going to use this little nudge tool and kind of straighten her nose out the way it used to be. Obviously, you know, this is to taste, and you know, if you're very comfortable with your clients, but you know, this was a workshop with my buddy, and my wife was not actually even set to do any modeling, anything. This was literally last minute. I'm like, hey, do you want to help me out? And she's like, okay. So anyway, because of that, I'm going to make sure that she looks as good as she does in real life. Obviously, my wife's got pretty big breasts and everything. I'm going to take the little shrink tool because, like I said earlier, she's kind of just not even really ready for anything. So I'm just going to take in this just a little bit, make it a little more natural, how she would normally stand straight up. And this is going to happen to you on photo shoots sometimes. You're going to get a shot that you like, but you know, there's going to be something that's like your client's not going to like it. And so it's okay to manipulate it, in my opinion. This is controversial. It's one of those things that you got to do it to taste. You got to know your clients, but I mean, for this piece right here, it's good. I'm just flattening her stomach back out. You don't need to go in and like, let me get my cursor down here. You don't need to go in and like tweak every little, see how I'm just taking this in? You don't need to do that. I'm gonna go back up. People have natural curves. That's, you know, people get it. But what you can do, get deep flag because there's, you can see through the shirt a little bit. What you can do is these little clothing things that are bunched up, you could take those in. You know, don't go overboard on it. It's one of those things that clothes, you know, bend and they bunch up and stuff like that. It's okay. So her skin is looking pretty good. We are going to do some skin smoothing and sharpening and different things, but okay. I was shooting, I'm going to zoom out, I was shooting at like a 2.0 aperture. That is a pretty shallow depth of field, so like, you know, she's in focus here and like in here and stuff like that, but you get out to where things jet out and stuff like that. and you zoom in, it's going to be out of focus. Again, we're going to not really worry about that too much because this is just a fun picture for the evening. So you'll notice I just straightened out her tummy line just a little bit. I'm not trying to make her look fake. I'm not going to go in and make her boobs bigger than they are. I'm not going to, shrink her arm that's here because it's closer to the camera and stuff like that. That's pretty realistic to what she looks like, And if your clients want you to do all that, they got to pay a decent amount. It's a lot of work to go in and perfect somebody. Just know that it's okay that there's some flaws showing. Again, this is not a matter of making somebody look like a different person. It's a matter of making them look like what you saw the day of the shoot. Sometimes our cameras don't pick things up. They flatten things out a little weird, or maybe you just got slightly the wrong angle. Person breathed funny, laughed, did whatever. Another thing, I'll zoom in on her face really quick before we get out of this. It'd be easy for me to go in here and do the Kim Kardashian thing and exaggerate her lips and stuff like that. It doesn't look real, so get out of that and do that. I am going to shrink that in because the angle's a little off. It doesn't look real to do that, so don't. Oh, here's one thing though I will say. So you'll notice this eye is really open and this eye is closed just a little bit. That is my wife. She does that very often, especially when she's relaxed. She'll kind of squint one eye. It is okay to take and open that up just to make it a little more even. I think that, if you see somebody in real life, you'd never notice stuff like that. But that millisecond that a camera takes a picture, you will notice every little flaw. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. Get out of liquefy. And there you notice everything's just fine. At this point, I'm going to go back to my crop tool. I'm just going to kind of analyze, maybe it would look better if I got her breast line directly on that third there. I think this is close. I don't want to move her up at all because you need a little bit of room. And it's about the same amount of room from her feet here, so I think that's good. Now, if you try and do generative expand in here because she is wearing lingerie, it'll probably flag us, but let's find out. We'll go to generative expand. I'm gonna hit OK. It may work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time, if you get some girl in what they think is a scantily clad outfit, it'll flag as something. So let's take a look. But it is nice if it does work because the shadow in here will be filled in. That's taking a little bit of time. I bet you it flags me. Sometimes it'll flag you partially, which is weird. It should be all the way or nothing. Oh, that worked. Okay. So here's version 1. You'll notice this is trying to replicate her shadow. Don't know if I like it for sure. There's number 2. It's okay. Other than this, shadow doesn't make sense. Number 3. That's no good there. So let me go to number 1. I think it's okay. It's just okay. And whatever. I'm going to just go with it because number 2. Let me go to number 2 again. Actually, I could clone that. I'm going to go to number 2 because I think if the shadow is too funky here, your eyes going to be drawn here instead of here. So that's that. I just flatten it out from here, and then I actually use this remove tool. Where to go? There it is, right here. So you'll notice the spot healing, remove, healing, patch tool, etc. I used to use the patch tool quite a bit for stuff like this. I'm just going to use the remove tool. I'm going to make it bigger, and I'm just going to go over that. There's a couple little specks here and there from stuff that's either on the ground or maybe my sensor is dirty. I'm gonna hit return there. If just going to think here for a second. Give me a second. This stuff used to work way faster, but I don't know if my computer has just got something wrong with it, or so many people are using it, it goes on the internet and it helps you out. Maybe that's slowing it down. Maybe I got slow internet, I don't know. Alright, so looking at this, I don't like this little spot there. There's a discoloration here. I don't mind this stuff, that's just texture in the background. This plant back here looks a little wonky, so we're just going to get rid of that. It's just a touch too close to the rest of this image. Draws my eye away from her, which, whatever. Okay, so I'm going to hit return. And we wait. It's not sponsored by Pepsi, but that Pepsi Zero is pretty darn tasty. The reason why I drink Pepsi Zero, by the way, is I'm diabetic. And you gotta cut those sugars out wherever you can. Alright, so there's just a couple more specs. Sometimes you have to go over this stuff twice. There's also, I don't think it's gonna matter because I'm gonna change this to black and white, but a weird green cast of stuff on the ground there. I think that's nitpicking. Again, alright. I have to be careful because her outfit is a little see-through there, and YouTube gets all weirded out if there's nudity, even though technically she's covered. Okay, so I'm going to use this remove tool. I'm going to be zoomed out here. I'm going to actually just remove the nipple for a second. We'll see if that works. I would have did this earlier, but pretty close. We're going to go over that one more time. Okay, so that smoothed it out just enough to where I don't think that we're going to get flagged from the internet police. Okay, so what we've done, we've trimmed her body down to be a little bit more what I see on a day-to-day basis. I didn't mess with like her body proportions and everything. Smoothed out the clothing. Made her face more natural as far as the pose goes. Here's another cool thing, because my wife did not get all made up for this. She didn't know I was going to do this. For one, my wife has a scar right here. I'm just going to use that remove tool. And so 23 years ago, she was in a car accident and basically peeled, her face off. And I met her right after that, so I think that was 24 years ago. She was just a young little girl, basically. And then I met her the following year, and she was pretty still, pink scar and everything. This remove tool is nice for if you catch bags under the eyes and stuff like that. Natural, everybody has them, but obviously in a photo shoot you want to not have that as much as possible. Now, if we were not doing natural light, and there's a light right above all this, if we're not doing natural light, probably wouldn't even noticed, because you can control everything with the light. But since we use natural light, we get what we get. I think Photoshop's really, really advanced in the last couple of years to where it helps us photographers. So look, now her eyes don't look like she's got big bags. I'm going to smooth her skin out and stuff, but that's a next phase. People that are really into frequency separation, stuff like that, will know exactly what to do. I just want to get the heavy things out of there. You could also, if you wanted to, and this doesn't really matter, I'm not really going to care about it. Some people are weird about neck wrinkles. You could utilize this tool and it should, yeah, see right there, it got rid of the neck wrinkle, but it kept the shadow under there. That's nice. I mean, I'm going to leave this other one because I was just showing you guys kind of what to do. She's got a couple of skin discolorations here and there because I don't think she was wearing hardly any makeup at all. And this light that's above her is not very flattering. It's kind of an orange, it's kind of a street lamp. And we'll do just a couple more here. Just these things probably wouldn't even really show up once we get it over to black and white. But so I think that looks pretty good. And you know, here's where some of the magic's going to happen. I have this Beautify plugin that you've seen open here. I'm not sponsored by them. I probably should, as much as I talk about it. This, for especially quick edits, if you're doing like, you know, senior portraits or, you know, small little modeling things or whatever, and it's not like a paid gig where you're, you know, working something for a magazine or something. This is a time saver here. So I'm going to hit plastic skin, which I never use to its full extent because it does what it says. It'll make the skin look like plastic. And so what we want to do is we want it to be subtle, but we don't want to smooth things out. So I'm going to start. It hasn't done anything yet. It just creates a layer here, and it's a mask. And then when you paint in that layer, it does the magic. So I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. I'm just going to go over this. So see how that like natural skin wrinkle went away. I'm just going to go in here. You know, I'm going to go over her breast tissue here as we, I was going to say as we age, but it could happen at any age. You know, you get little stretch marks and little things. Aren't noticeable 99% of the time. That camera captures the light just perfectly, and boom, all of a sudden, a girl sees that, she's like, I'm going to be self-conscious. So we don't need to accentuate that. We could take it down a notch. And really just go over, like, you know, the backs of her legs right here, you know, like, you know, again, you know, we're not perfect, but a lot of times in a picture that capturing that millisecond, you know, we want it to be perfect. We want to look as good as we can. And so we decide what the camera needs to see and what it doesn't. Pretty difficult to do in camera, but in Photoshop, it's pretty easy to go, okay. You know, like right here, the skin is, there's nothing wrong with it here. I just go over it. See, it didn't really do anything. I actually get rid of it because it softened up her tattoo just a bit. And again, this right now, I think this is at 75%. I'm going to take it to 40 or 50%, but I'll go over the neckline here, soften up the neck wrinkles if they are there. Soften over this. We don't want her skin to look actual plastic. I think that term is cool to put it in there, but we don't want her to look like a toy. We want her to look like a real person, but we have to go over these things to soften them down just a bit. It'll also, like, if you got like weird little peach fuzz or anything like that, which I don't think in this picture is an issue, it'll kind of soften that. Sometimes you need to use the remove tool to go from there. I'm going to go here. I'm also going to go over that nipple line again. Just one of those things where the internet police will be like, oh, there's a nipple. But if it was a dude here, it'd be like totally fine. I don't agree with that. I don't want to, you know, put porn out there, but at the same time, I think, you know, nipples are a pretty natural thing. All right, so there we go. I'm gonna now take the opacity down, like I said, down to, I'm gonna try 40%. I want to zoom in just a little bit, mainly on her face, just to, yep, just subtly get the skin a little smoother in here. And then, you don't have to do this, but I always just flatten my image down. It's a very destructive way to work, and I do that just so my screen doesn't get too cluttered when I'm showing people how to do stuff. If I'm not worried about people watching, I'll probably keep all this stuff so it's easy for me to backtrack or fix things, but I got a pretty good idea what I'm going to do. So what I did now is I hit Sharpen Eyes and Beautify. Again, like I've said in other videos, this Beautify tool, there's a million tools very similar to this that are even free. So if you do some searching, look for a plugin that will do skin retouching and stuff like that. This one just, I've been using for a couple of years. I like it. It's easy. Paid like 40, 50 bucks for it. I'm gonna get my money's worth. All right, so the first thing I do is I click on the light thing. I'm gonna lighten her eye, which I actually have a eyeball lightening one as well. I'm going to basically do the kind of the T of her face, and I'm doing kind of a broad stroke, and then I'm also going to go over her hair, It is lighter than her skin. And if I used a flash, I wouldn't have to do this because it would automatically illuminate. Might even go over this little metal little thing here. Lighten where her nipple was. Just so you know that there's something there. And then I usually dab it over her tattoos because they're actually really vibrant in real life. The lighting was horrible from that day, especially for natural light. Again, you could combat this with, bringing strobes or whatever. Now I go to sharpen, and I sharpen right over her tattoos. I sharpen over her clothes with the little metal rivets. Again, down her tattoos here. They're kind of in the shadow, so it doesn't really matter. I'll sharpen the edges of her shoes. And I go over her eyes, her mouth. Shrink this down and go over her hairline. But remember, we blurred out her skin just a little bit, so we don't need to resharpen it. That would be silly. But things that you would think need to pop. Now I click on the whole thing. I'm going to take that down to about 40-50%. And try 40. Yep, you want it to be subtle. You don't want to overbake the image. And if you don't know what I mean by overbake the image, it's when you overprocess it. Just like baking a cake. You ruin the cake if you overbake it. You want that shit moist. Now here's the thing that bugs me here. I'm just going to show you. This shadow here kind of draws my eyes down here. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just take this. Go over to where I'm not grabbing her. I'm just going to select this and I'm just going to pull this over, stretch it just a bit. You won't notice I did that. It's like if you zoom in. Here's one more thing that you could do. And I'm just working on the fly here. I don't really always have a set plan. But what we're doing here is we're creating a mask. I'm going to go right over my wife here. Then I'm going to hit X on my keyboard. And that just inverts the mask. I think I need to bring a little bit further away from her face. Maybe come right in there. So you can take the exposure down just a touch. It's like a vignette that we're working here, except for a custom vignette. I'm also going to go to the texture, bring it down, clarity, bring that down, and dehaze. And I'm not going to do just a little bit. And now that I've done that, I'm going to go to shadows, bring those down, and exposure, bring that down just a little bit. Show you what it did before, after. Just making those shadows a little more moody. All right, it's looking pretty good. Now, because we use natural light, there's a catch light here from the street lamp, but not over here. Her eyes don't have that color that's just really, really popping here. So I'm going to show you guys a little trick. Create a new layer. Got a brush. I'm going to turn it to white. I'm going to go right over her eye. Make it a touch smaller. You don't want to as big as the whole eye. Dab it once, dab it twice. Over here, dab it once, dab it twice. Now I'm going to do some erasing here, and I know she looks like Raiden from Mortal Kombat at this point, but you'll see. So I'm going to go down to soft light. You'll notice right there without, there with, it just lightened up her eyes. But you got to go in with now an eraser tool and get rid of the white over the black, because if it's not solid black. Then I go over this top part just because more than likely your circle went into that area. I go right up on her lower eye. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I think I'm going to do the top. I haven't done the top lid. All right, so if I go, see there? Now when you zoom out a little bit, this makes her eyes pop that much more. I could even go a little more subtle. I just take it down to maybe 80%. Just little stars. Brings a little light back into her eye. All right. So here's something that bugs me. See this little wrinkle in her wrist? Obviously, we all have wrinkles and this and that, but for some reason, this one just draws my eye, so I'll get the remove tool and just hit it. Just get the little things like that. It's okay. It doesn't change who they are. It's one of those things that it's about making the picture very appealing to the masses, and sometimes little distractions like that, it's like having a piece of lint on the screen or something like that. It's just enough distraction that's going to bug you. There's a couple little shadows here that I don't like, so let's get rid of them. That's the stuff that you're going to see once you start editing a picture. You're going to go, oh wow, that's a little bit of a distraction. Here, there's a little bit of, just skin wrinkles. Bug me. The rest isn't that bad. So I'm going to hit go away. Remove. And that's what we're going to do. So, like I said, we don't have to go crazy though. Now, you can't see here, but some women, they'll have like a C-section scar or whatever. Here, my wife does. Can't see it because her panties are covering it. But if that was something that bugged them, you can get rid of it. This is bugging me right here. See how her panties pull in and then our skin, and that's probably because we did a little removal. Just gonna see if the remove tool will straighten that out. It did. Perfect. Okay. It just looks a little more natural this way. Sometimes clothing pinches things. Like you can see here, the clothing's pinching her back here, but she's got a natural bend in her body, and this clothing has like several straps. I'm not gonna try to fix that. I could straighten this out. I'm not gonna bother. It's not, listen, I mean, you could work on this stuff for hours and hours and hours, and the end result, nobody's gonna notice except for you. So, all right, so here would be a pretty decent overall picture, other than if we're going to go with color, I would probably adjust those colors and get a very bright poppin'. And the first thing you're going to do is go to color and just go to monochrome. And as you can see right here, get me out of the way here. But what we're going to do is now we're going to adjust the colors. I know there is no color here, but it views it. So I'm going to take it down just a touch. Actually, I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull it up because that brightens up her skin just a little bit. All right. So I'm not going to mess with the exposure or anything because we already did all that stuff. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to play with the highlights a little bit. If there's any hot spots on her skin, which there's just a smidge. Take up the shadows just a little bit, just to bring her out a little bit more. And then I'm gonna take the texture up just to get like the little fine details in her hair. Don't go very hard on this, it'll make her skin look bad. I'm not gonna do any dehaze. And then I'll lift the blacks up just a smidgen here. Just because we do see these little blue spots, it means that's lost all the data. Not dehaze, up to blacks. And bring those up just enough. Probably have to bring the shadows up just a little bit. There we go. I think again we could now maybe I'll do a linear gradient. I'm gonna go to about here. I'm gonna bring the exposure down and darken that down just a touch, but it's gonna get brightened back up here in a second. Adjust that temperature yet. So I'm going to bring the texture down, clarity down, and then that dehaze down. That just adds kind of a hazy glow. Probably want to go to about somewhere there. So if I turn that off, turn it on, I bring it back just a bit so our thigh stays bright. This already has a vignette up there. We don't need to do anything there. I'm going to go back up to my exposure, take it down just a little bit more. I really want the eyes to kind of go up the picture, and I think that does the trick. Now go back to your global and go to details. We can sharpen this picture just up a little bit. If you hold down the Option key, It gives you some options. With the masking, go down to where there's actually details, and you'll pull this up to just like her, to the point where it's just put details in her, see her hair and her tattoos and stuff like that. That's all we need. Her eyes, her hair, the tattoos. If we turn this here, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see. If we turn this off and on, it's very, very subtle. And you could bring that sharpening up a little bit. We could bring the radius up, the detail. There's before, there's after. That's globally detail. Before, after. You'll notice just a little bit in her eyes get sharpened up. You don't want to overdo it. They start looking really, really fake after a while. Again, see it? Look at the eye, just barely. I mean, bring that sharpening up, but don't overdo it. All right. So I think this is starting to look pretty good. I'm going to go back to the basic controls. I'm going to adjust the color. I think I'm going to bring it down. I think it's a little warm. I know it's black and white, but that does adjust things. It's strange that it still sees the color there. Bring the exposure up just a touch. Now I'll finally play with the contrast slider, and I like kind of that really punchy black. So I take it just to where you'll notice there. Oops. A little bit of this is just gone. There's no detail there, so it doesn't matter. But now, like, the blacks are black and the whites are whites. And speaking of whites, I'll bring those up too. So you can bring those right up to where they go here. Probably just a touch too much. Just gonna bring up like 9%. We don't need it to be super bright. Okay, so that is that. Now I'm going to hit OK. And we got a nice, clean black and white image. I'll bring my face over here so you can see the screen. Look at this. I think this is really nice. Now, one thing I do, black and white film from back in the day. Oh, actually, before I do that, I'm going to go, and I would say this is probably a little controversial too. I know that it's funny. Jared Polin, not to throw him under the bus, will say don't add grain. I've seen him say that, but then his presets has one with grain and one without grain. So I don't really know why he feels that way. I don't care. I think he's a great YouTuber, and I do support him. But like with a lot of YouTubers, probably including me, will say things that apply for specific situations, but don't necessarily think about every situation, and people take it too serious. So I'm gonna just maybe add like 9 or 10%, and just maybe we'll go a little bit more. Like let's do almost 19%. Actually, you could just set 20%. All right, so you see the difference if I click on this. That just looks more like film, like old film noir stuff, old black and white movies. I could have added we got these strong shadows. I could have added strong shadows across her face, so just her eyes. I think that's probably overdoing it. So now I select all. Okay, select T, which is transform, and I just hold the shift key down and try and keep everything same proportions. I like to add a white border to my black and white pictures, especially. It looks more filmic. Now, in the Nick collection, which I'm not going to open it, but here, the Nick collection, in analog effects, it could do film borders for you. I don't think necessarily they're needed. This looks just fine the way it is. That's it. That's pretty much how I would edit one of these outdoor boudoir style shoots. Nothing crazy. If you wanted to, you could sometimes you have to go in and change your mode back to RGB. Luckily it didn't need me to do that, but what you could do is you could do like auto tone on here and see if it changed anything. Auto contrast hasn't done anything because I think I got it all right. Auto color, nothing's changed. So if things look a little wonky, sometimes just going and clicking those auto settings in Photoshop are kind of cool. Look at that grain there. It looks like old film, and that's the look I wanted. I didn't want, and you got to apply that grain after the fact, because in real life the grain would really show up in the blacks. If you do it early on and then do all these adjustments, things get way too black and it doesn't look natural. So you do that step right at the end. I think this is it. I think that's a finished product. So thanks for watching my crap. I think that this image went from a mediocre image to a pretty nice image I could deliver to my wife. Although if she was a client that asked me for that, I think that'd be a classy thing. She could make a little old school Victoria's Secret poster out of it, or whatever she wanted. There's nothing pornographic here. It's just a classy lingerie shoot. So, all right, that's me, Greg, signing off. If you like my stuff, please subscribe. I could use all the help to get to the 1,000 followers you need to be successful on YouTube. And yeah, like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, all that crap. And we'll see you next time. Peace.